Not long ago, 3 girls traveled to Otaru, Hokkaido. While hiking up a quiet mountain road, they paused at a roadside convex mirror to take a group photo. All seemed well until they got home and reviewed the pictures. That's when they noticed it. In one of the photos, the girl on the far right seemed to have an extra head, a human head, floating from behind her shoulder. It wasn't a reflection glitch. It was too clear. The outline of her jacket remained intact, but the additional head had no body, no legs, no explanation. They confirmed there were no other people on that mountain road, only the 3 of them standing before the mirror. The girl on the right, the one with the extra, let's say, passenger, was also the weakest physically among them. She'd been sick for months. Disturbed, the girls returned to the same mirror, tried replicating the photo. They never could. Some say they saw a ghost. Speaking of mirrors, there is a famous urban legend in Japan known as Kagami ni ojigi o shite wa ikenai, which translates to never bow to the mirror, or simply real, aka riaru. And so today, I'm going to share one of the most chilling Japanese internet stories. It started around November 24th, 2009, when an anonymous user, we'll call him Ito, posted a long account of terrifying experiences that had haunted him for over 2.5 years. Ito claimed it began all after performing a spirit summoning ritual as a joke. He thought it was harmless fun. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Ito was 23, fresh out of college, working for a small company in Tokyo. Among his co-workers was a man named O, who had grown up in Hokkaido, a place often described as Japan's frontier, where old taboos and warnings tend to linger, and loved sharing obscure spiritual taboos. "Do this sequence of movements," O once said, "and something will appear. It might be a ghost, it might be a spirit, but you know it will be something ancient and hungry." O never said it outright, but what he had described was actually a ritual to be performed in front of a mirror. You see, in Japan, especially in Shinto tradition, mirrors are often regarded as sacred objects of truth and etiquette, housing presence, rather than simply showing it. You bow to people, to gods, and so if you bow to a mirror, it is considered simply a way of acknowledging whatever may be looking back. Naturally, being a skeptical man, Ito laughed at O's instructions. Then one summer, he, O, and 2 women they met online visited a haunted location as a thrill-seeking trip. The site was desolate, shadowed by woods. They played around, laughed. Nothing happened, of course. Days later, back in Tokyo, Ito was working late. The company had an unspoken rule. No junior staff could leave until the boss did. Ito didn't get home until nearly midnight. Exhausted, he stumbled into his apartment. Then, for reasons he still can't explain, he walked to his mirror and performed the entire ritual that O had specifically warned him about. The final motion? A bow to the mirror. Ito never shared the full movements in his story to protect the reader, he said. And then he whispered, "No way anything shows up here." He turned around. There, in the center of his small room, stood a figure. It was about 160 centimeters tall, or about 5'3", with dry, waist-length hair covering its face like wilted seaweed. Its face was covered in slips of paper, talismans. It wore a pristine white kimono, like those worn by the dead, and it swayed back and forth, back and forth. Ito couldn't move, couldn't scream. He switched on the lights, and it was still there, but now it was surrounded by a faint blue glow. Ito ran without thinking twice, didn't remember how. Then when he was finally conscious. He was lying in a supermarket near the train station, somehow surrounded by people checking on him. But the dread would not leave him. Did I forget to lock my door? What was that? At dawn, Ito returned home, finally. The spirit was gone, but the smell remained. The floor where it had stood was covered in wet, rotting mud. Even the light switch had smears of it. That thing had the politeness to turn the lights off. At work, Ito told O everything. O laughed until Ito described the ghost's hair, the talismans, its movements. Then O stopped laughing. He agreed to accompany Ito home that night. The moment he opened the door, the foul smell hit him. Holy cow, you weren't kidding. Then he bolted, ran back to his apartment. He promised to find help. Desperate, Ito visited temples and shrines around Tokyo. None believed him. One monk told him to relax and think positively. But then he remembered his grandmother's friend, Akagi-san, a powerful elderly priestess from his hometown of Nagasaki. I should point out a few things here. First, what's so special about Nagasaki? Well, historically, it's been a crossroads of religions, a meeting point between Shinto, Buddhism, and Christianity. As such, it's also considered a place where spiritual systems overlap rather than compete. Second, being Ito's hometown means that his journey there would symbolize returning to ancestral grounds, and in turn, returning to older, inherited protections. In this case, a haunting or curse would therefore only intensify once the spiritual boundaries were crossed, as the spirit could then be entering territory where it had less control over the host. Third, Akagi-san's role. As an older shrine priestess, she was believed to have not only endured spiritual incidents over the years, but also survived them. Rather than confronting spirits directly, she was known for enduring them, learning when resistance only made things worse. With that in mind, Ito took a train en route to Nagasaki. But as he walked the streets, he began to feel a burning, tight sensation around his neck, like a rope being pulled. It was sudden, and it was a warning. The closer he got to protection, the more the spirit would assert ownership. He ran home. Time stopped meaning anything. Safety was the only thought left. He arrived to find his mother on the phone with his grandmother. Her eyes were frantic, her voice trembling. "Your grandmother says you've been cursed. You need to come to Nagasaki right away." Little did Ito know just how much worse things were about to get. A few evenings later, he thought to look in the mirror and froze. His neck was now covered in red welts, raised lines like rope burns, and beneath, small blisters, dripping pus. Ito collapsed. He could no longer deny it. He wasn't imagining things. He was being eaten alive. The next day, he received a call from O. "I found someone. His name's Mr. Hayashi. He's an expert, but it'll cost 500,000 yen, a little over $3,200 US. Ito, desperate and in agony, agreed. That night, Hayashi arrived. A young man in his 30s who looked more like a gangster than a priest. Hayashi's ritual was strange. He lit candles, poured sake, and chanted odd phrases. At one point, as he sat in his bed, Ito felt a searing pain surface around his neck. Then, silence. The chanting stopped. He peeked from under his blanket. The ghost had appeared again. It was now face to face with Hayashi, inches away, whispering. Then it turned its head, owl-like, and looked at Ito, dead in the eyes. Ito screamed, buried himself in the blanket. Then he heard footsteps, running. Hayashi had fled. O and his friend were waiting in the car. Hayashi burst out the door, jumped in, and they sped off into the night. No one said a word. Days later, Ito's grandmother arranged for him to be brought to Nagasaki. He met Akagi-san in her temple. She said, "You are kind. People like you attract spirits, not because they want to hurt you, but because they simply want to be seen, to be heard. This one chose you." And so began his long spiritual rehabilitation. He lived in the temple for 5 months. There he met others, a woman tormented by a snake spirit, a spirit for 40 years, a man whose family was destroyed by a curse. Gradually, the spirit left, or perhaps Ito learned to live with it. Akagi-san eventually told him he could return home, but warned, "If you feel it watching you again, don't ignore it." 2 years passed. He lived quietly, tried to forget. Then one day, a piece of mail arrived with 2 letters, one from his grandmother and another from Akagi-san that said, "I must apologize. I lied to you back then. I was terrified too. That thing was beyond me." Akagi-san's letter ended with one haunting line. "The truly evil ones wait until you've let your guard down." And one final twist. As the story ended, Ito left one more note. "I lied. I'm not Ito. I'm O." Now, how about that? Many online communities have speculated the meaning of that ending. Some say O survived, while Ito was the one haunted, forever cursed by the ritual and leaving O to pen the story in Ito's name, rather than his own, just in case the spirit followed whoever was named. In other words, O may just have doomed someone else and lived to tell the tale. Others say O and Ito are the same person, and so this unreliable narrator split himself into a curious instigator, O, and a suffering victim, Ito, with the trauma fracturing his identity. This interpretation, you'll see, actually ties into the recurring mirror theme. Mirrors reflect, mirrors double, mirrors lie. Still others claim that the spirit is still out there, and the names used in this story are merely a defense. This would build more heavily on folklore logic, since in many Japanese ghost beliefs, names matter, naming draws attention, and being named can bind you to a spirit. So then if a spirit reads, listens, or notices stories, then lying about the narrator's identity would actually be a survival tactic for the real ones in danger. As you can see, this story has left many ends unweaved for years. We never confirm who is dead, nor who is truly alive to tell the tale. So best you remember, when next you encounter a mirror, heed this warning well. Do not bow before it.